Hello my dorks, it's the Dork Author here, and today we are back with another ranking video. That's right everybody, it's finally time. Let's rank all of the Max and Ruby 0004 remakes from worst to best. And all retakes, both apply here. Since the support on the Suicide Mouse ranking videos was absolutely insane, I really wanted to give another creepypasta that has a lot of remakes the same treatment. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing today. And yes, I said we, because I am joined by a very special guest. Everybody say hello to Aicha, also known as Blazer.
Hey everyone, my name is Aicha. Thank you, Dark, for asking me to help out with this ranking video. I'm very passionate about creepypasta retakes since I've done quite a few of them myself.
Thank you very much, I'm glad to have you on.
But let's not take up any more time and just get straight into the rankings.
And because I'm a good host, let's let Aicha take on the number 10 spot.
Number 10, we have Geo 2010's version. In terms of it being the most faithful to the original story, I give it a 1 out of 5. They had Max speak full sentences in a few scenes instead of having Max speak one-worded sentences. They added songs in the scene where Max and Ruby are standing in the graveyard instead of it being silent.
The house is haunted by the echo of your last goodbye.
And the climax of the video is a blatant rehash of Vibing Leaf's Red Mist retake. For the animation, I'm giving it a 0 out of 5. I feel like this is self-explanatory on why I'm giving the animation a 0 out of 5. One thing is, most of the animation is stock images of Max and Ruby that you would find on Google Images or from the Creepypasta Wikia. And the images that they do use are different designs of Max and Ruby from different seasons, which is honestly distracting. And the original drawings of Max and Ruby that they do include is, how do I put this lightly? It looks like something a little kid would draw on an iPad. In terms of the sound effects, I give it a 0 out of 5 as well, because most of the sound effects and music are taken from other creepypasta remakes, like Vibing Leaf, for example. And for the horror factor, I give it a 0 out of 5 for all of the reasons that I've listed previously. This all adds up to a 1 out of 20. Now keep in mind, this is not made for hate. I'm sure that there was a lot of effort put in here, but the animation still doesn't look that good. Let's just hope that Geo keeps improving and finds better equipment for their animations.
Coming in at number 9, we have That Is the Moz's version. Hopefully I got that name right, it's a little bit funny to say, but your version is at number 9. In terms of how faithful it is to the original story, I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. This version definitely does include a few more things that are faithful to the original Max and Ruby 0004. It does have the intro of Max and Ruby with the red static and everything. It does feature the tombstones and everything properly, and that's all good. But in general, it adds a lot of unnecessary and unneeded BS that ultimately was just completely pointless to add. Like the whole scene of Ruby's mother snapping her neck, the weird screaming sounds, and weird effects when they turn corrupted at the start. Just things like that turn this from something creepy or unnerving to something just silly and cringe. That's why I give it a 1.5 out of 5. For the animation, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Now this may be a little bit high for a number 9 ranking, but despite the unnecessary inclusion of Ruby's mum snapping her neck or breaking her neck, it was a really clean animation, I'll admit. I like it, it was alright. But generally, the character designs of Max and Ruby in that are just kinda to the book, a little bit worse than just the standard design, so that's why it gets a little bit lower. For the sound effects, I'm going to give it a 0 out of 5. Generally because I think all of the creepy sound effects were horrible. Borderline cringy, extremely over the top, and just not natural in any way. I genuinely consider them to be really bad distractions for what could have been one of the better Max and Ruby 0004 versions. I really don't like them. And finally, for the visuals, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5. There are some parts I do not like about this Max and Ruby 0004 version. Generally, the fact that it takes us a little while to actually get into some of the actual scary bits, like Max taking his own life and so on. I'm also not really a big fan of seeing it start immediately in the house rather than just starting with them outside playing a game, because I think the changes in the scenery could really help prolong a Max and Ruby 0004 and make it look better. And since unfortunately we didn't really get too much of that in this version, the visuals are going to be lower as a result. All of these add up to, that is the Moz's version, sitting with a 4.5 out of 20. This version definitely fits comfortably into the bottom tiers of Max and Ruby 0004 versions. And while there definitely are some things in there you can praise, I generally don't think that it's considered one of the better ones. I don't think it's close to number 1. But still, you gotta give props to everybody for at least giving it a shot. Aicha has the number 8 spot, so let's let her take it away.
At number 8, we have Augusto YTP's version. For how faithful it is to the original story, I'll give it a 1 out of 5, because they took footage from an episode and added a VHS filter and edited some screenshots of the episode and called it a day. Granted, they did include Max's death, which I can give credit for, but other than that, there really isn't that much substance in this one. Hi, this is second recording Aicha. I was a little bit too strict with the ranking of the visuals. For the visuals, I will give it a 2 out of 5. The VHS filter is a nice breath of fresh air from all the monotonous and repetitious static we see on nearly every other version. Plus, I think the way that they shown Max's body, not only the location but perspective too, it is unique and it should be something that should be acknowledged, even if it isn't 100% accurate to the story. For the sound effects, I'll give it a 1 out of 5, since most of the sound effects are taken from other remakes, but there is a little bit more variety here. And finally, for the spook factor, I'll give it a 1 out of 5, since I could see myself being scared of this as a little kid, but I can tell most of the footage was ripped from one episode, so there's only as much credit as I can give. So for Augusto YTP's version, I give it a 4 out of 20. I'll give it a 4 out of 20. Despite it being this low on the list and rather forgettable, things are slowly improving.
Coming in at number 7, we have the Jace Here version. In terms of the faithfulness to the original story, Jace is coming in strong, well, strong compared to the other ones, at a 2.5 out of 5. This really starts off quite well with everything we need. It begins with them loading up the file for Max and Ruby, the episode. It begins with Max and Ruby staring at the screen as usual. Then we get to see the parents and the stuff they do at the start, and generally, this version typically stays really faithful to the story. Except in the second half where it kind of goes off in a tangent and becomes its own thing. I find it a little bit distracting, which is why I had to knock it down a few pegs. But overall, until the second half, I think it was really good. For the animation, I'm again gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. I really like the uniqueness of the animation style in this version. However, particularly I think the original style is a little bit better. But everything was completely drawn in their own style, which you gotta give some credit for. Also towards the end, when it does, become its own thing, I think it was really creative with the things it did and all the colours and everything. I think it all popped quite well. So that's why I give it a praise. For the sound effects, I'm only gonna give it a 1 out of 5. This is simply due to the fact that certain key sound effects are missing from the story. Most notably, the sounds of the parents choking at the start, for instance. The sounds of Max hanging, like the sound of the rope. None of that happens. I also again think that some of the sound effects during some scary parts really aren't too good or not fitting in terms of Max and Ruby. They really just don't fit the tone of the original story, which is why I have to knock the sound effects down to a 1. And finally for the visuals, it's pretty much the exact same thing in a 1. The thing I have with the visuals is, yes they're cool, but there are definitely some gripes I have. For example, the subtitles when the characters are talking is tiny. You can barely read it. Hell, I only noticed this video even had subtitles when I was checking the videos to determine their rankings. Not to mention when it starts to divert from the original story, I just think the visuals are too out of place, generally. And those reasons are why Jace here's version sits at a 7 out of 20. A little bit below the middle ground, but ultimately it definitely is better than the ones that came before it. I just wish it stayed a little bit more on course with the original story. Had it done that, I definitely think it could have been in the top 5. But unfortunately, that's not what we have here. Aicha has the number 6 spot. Let's see how she ranks it.
Barely missing the top 5, we have Sea Life 4 Guy's original 2013 version. In terms of how faithful it is to the original story, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. The only complaints that I have would be that there was a loud scream in the intro, which hurt my ears, and there was no scene of Max and Ruby sobbing in Ruby's room. It was only the scene of the parents dying. For the animation, I'll give it a 3 out of 5, because it is a bit inconsistent, but more consistent compared to the others that we've looked at so far. The axe animation is a bit too choppy for my taste, no pun intended, and some of the animation, it's still frames used from the Creepypasta wiki, which is cool in some instances, but it does seem a bit low budget, but it makes sense on why it's low budget, considering the person that made this stated that they had no experience with animation prior to this, so I do have to dock a point for that. However, I will give a little bit of leniency with what could be the parents' designs, considering the fact that they aren't from the actual show, but that's mainly due to the fact that the animation was made before the parents were introduced in the actual series. And for the sound effects, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. Since while yes, some of them are original, some of the sound effects are a bit too loud, such as the screams. Speak of the devil, all of the screams were not done by the person who made the animation. Instead, they were actually taken from news clips. I'll let Dark Author show a comparison for a brief moment.
Scam.
And this comes to us from KHAS News 5 in Hastings, Nebraska, where local residents got their scream on. Thousand people being tortured at once.
The voice acting was also not entirely great, since it was a bit too quiet, and Ruby's voice isn't entirely accurate to the show. And for the spook factor, I'll give it a 3 out of 5, since I do remember watching this as a kid and finding it spooky. However, I can't deny that the animation quality does bring it down quite a bit. So for Sea Life 4 Guy's original 2013 version, I'll give it a 12 out of 20. While it's not bad, there are a few remakes that are better than this.
Smack in the middle at the number 5 spot, we have Trauma Core Thriller's version. For the accuracy to the original story, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Now this retake of Max and Ruby 0004 has basically almost everything you could want in the version. You got the parents after the whole introductory scene with them choking, the sound effect is there. You've got Ruby walking in and Max hanging himself, pretty much everything like that's normal. However, there are a few things I need to talk about. One of them is, you guys are being the victim of a Mandela effect again. There is no scene in the original Max and Ruby 0004 where Ruby is staring into the camera with blue eyes and breaking the fourth wall, saying like this was your fault because you didn't watch my show or something. There is no point in that original story where this line or this thing is ever mentioned. So any version that has that can't really be considered as the 100% most accurate out there. Plus we're also missing the introductory part of Max and Ruby standing with the red static and everything. That is not there, unfortunately. So that's why I give it a 4 out of 5. In terms of the animation / art, I'm going to be giving it a 3.5 out of 5. This version of Max and Ruby 0004 is kind of a 50-50 on its art style. Half of it is just reusing assets and other models from the actual show of Max and Ruby, while the other half is actually really well done animation, all things considered. I really like how Max and Ruby look, how the parents look. I really think it fits the style. I just wish they could have done a little bit more with it, like make everything in that animation style. Obviously I understand why they didn't, because it takes a lot of time to do, but that's just a bit of a personal gripe, but it's honestly not that bad, which is why I give it a 3.5 out of 5. For the sound effects, I'm also going to be giving it a 3.5 out of 5. The sound effects of the parents choking is a very good addition, and I really wish more Max and Ruby 0004 versions had it. I don't really know why they don't have it, but they don't. There's also a plus in the sense that it's not too ridiculously loud to the point that it hurts your ears. But there is an unneeded inclusion of a suicide mouse scream which really gets under my skin. There are so many other stock screams, or screams in general, you could have gone with, and hearing that damn scream annoys me now. Suicide Mouse has forever scarred it for me. And that's why I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Would have gone higher, but I'm just tired of hearing the same stock screams over and over. And finally, for the visuals, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It was certainly unnerving, I will give it that. I just again wish they could have done a little bit more with the horror. It's mainly because the first half of the whole episode relies on the animation from the original show, so they can't really get too creative with how scary they can make it look, which is why I have to knock the visuals down to that score. But as a whole, this leaves Trauma Core Thriller's version sitting comfortably at 14 out of 20. A very respectable score, not gonna lie. Good work, Trauma Core, you actually did very good with this, keep it up. Aicha has the number 4 spot, so let's see how she does.
And number 4 is a collaborative version of Max and Ruby 0004 from 2020, done by Sea Life 4 Guy and Finder Lurker. In terms of how accurate this is to the original story, I give this one a 4 out of 5. The reason why is because it actually follows almost everything perfectly. The only thing missing would be the lack of a choking sound with the parents' deaths, and the lack of a choking sound when Max, hangs himself. For the animation, I will give it a 3 out of 5 because it is a bit inconsistent, like the original Sea Life 4 Guy version. Some of the clips are taken from the actual show, such as the scene with Max and Ruby playing, which is the same scene from the original Sea Life 4 Guy version, or Max and Ruby standing in the garden with no faces. You can tell that's basically edited over. And you can also tell who animated which scene, which makes this remake a bit distracting to watch when you're an animator yourself. And the parents' deaths animation was done a bit better than the original, but it still looks a little bit too fluid, being placed over the animation of Max and Ruby crying, which looks very choppy and has very little frames. Other than that, it is a remarkable improvement over the original. For the sound effects, I'll give it a 4 out of 5, since the screaming does hurt my ears even at the lowest volume. and it does have a few unnecessary screams at the end, but I think that it may have been an editing mistake on the uploader's part, so I will give a benefit of the doubt on that regard. And I will give credit that the voice acting for Ruby is done much better here than the original version. She actually sounds almost like the original voice actress from seasons 1 through 2. But the acting does have a little bit too much stuttering, so it is a bit hard to make out. And for the spook factor, I'll give it a 3 out of 5, because while it does look pretty good compared to the original, it does miss a few beats and it does lack in originality in some areas. It also does give off a bit of a homemade look in some scenes, as I mentioned in the animation section of this entry. And it's still easy to tell who made which scene if you have a very keen eye like I do. So that leads to Find Your Lurker / Sea Life 4 Guy's version to be ranked a 15 out of 20. Not bad, Sea Life 4 Guy. Keep up the good work.
Coming in at the number 3 spot, we have RJ's version. For how faithful it is to the original story, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Besides literally 2 things, I consider this almost perfectly to the letter in terms of incorporating everything from the original story. The only gripes I have is, again, the whole scene at the end with Ruby breaking the fourth wall and speaking to the main characters, or whoever's watching the video. Again, people, that doesn't happen, it's not in the original story. For the visuals, this might be a bit of a hot take, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I love everything to do with the visuals in RJ's version. I genuinely think they're all really good. I love the animation of the characters, they're absolutely spot on. I love the visual staticky effect, everything is just really perfect with the visuals and really nothing I would change. For the sound effects, I'm gonna have to knock it down a peg and bring it to a 3.5 out of 5. The reason why I bring it this low compared to the other rankings is simply because I think the audio at times is a bit too loud and too muffled, to the point where it becomes less scary and more just visual mush, and it hurts your ears to listen to. So you can't really take in that horror aspect that the sound effects would originally give you, because it's way too loud for you to comprehend properly. But if we take away the problems with the sound, I genuinely think the sound effects are really good. So that's why it kind of evens out to be a 3.5 out of 5. And finally for the animation, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Because wow, I think the animations in this video are very, very fluid. Like the facial expressions on Ruby, the other characters, Max, I genuinely think this is one of the best in terms of animations. It's not too stiff, it doesn't move around too much, I feel like it captures that perfect balance that a normal kids show would capture in terms of their characters' movements. Plus I just think it really meshes well with the rest of the story and all the other factors I've gave it. So this leaves RJ's version sitting at 17 out of 20. Absolutely deserving to be in the top 5 in terms of Max and Ruby 0004 videos. RJ, you did a very good job with this, and I think we can safely say that the title is either intentionally misleading or unintentionally misleading, because I don't consider this goofy at all. Aicha has the number 2 spot, so let's see how she ranks it.
At number 2 is a rather controversial choice, but we have Denise Kazui's version as number 2. For the story accuracy, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. And the main reason why is just because of the fact that it included that fourth wall break at the end. So I do have to duck away a few points for that. Other than that, it follows almost everything perfectly down to a T. For the animation, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. This is where I'll deduct half a point, because the animation is a bit too clear of quality and a bit too smooth in some parts. And the parents' deaths animation was a bit too hard to see. It's still pretty good, it's just that the models are a little bit too clear compared to the animation from the original show. There is not really that much motion blur that is noticeable, so I will have to deduct half a point there. It's still great though. In terms of sound design, I will give it another 4.5 out of 5, because there are original sound effects and the voice acting is original and the sound design is original, but there is a minor nitpick that I have with this version, and that is the constant playing of the intro, which can get a bit annoying after a while. I wish that Denise would have included more soundtracks from the actual show. And for the spook factor, I give it a 4.5 out of 5, since there is more awkward silence than unnecessarily loud screams. The animation does throw me off a little bit because it's a bit too smooth. I wish that Denise did add some motion blur to make it a little bit more accurate to the actual show animation. But again, that's just a minor nitpick that I have. I remember being unsettled when I watched this scene where Ruby was opening the door for the first time, and that easily was the best part. That leaves Denise Kazui's version at an 18 out of 20. Now we're on to the grand finale. What is the best version of Max and Ruby 0004? Well, let's find out. Take it away, Dark.
Taking the gold medal as the number 1 for all of the Max and Ruby 0004 videos we can rank. I've probably missed a few, by the way, so if I get comments like, oh, you missed this and this and this, it's because I don't really have time to include every single one. I just grabbed the ones that were the most notable and most unique. But putting all of that aside, it's Aicha's own version. Yes, she actually made her own version of Max and Ruby 0004. Also, this isn't biased, by the way, I just genuinely think it's the best version. Because I saw Aicha's version before I asked her to come work with me on this video. And in terms of the score, everything gets a 5 except for the faithfulness, which gets a 4.5 out of 5. Again, I have to stress, everybody, Ruby does not break the fourth wall or speak to the viewers. Aicha, I love your video, but you don't get off the hook in terms of this detail. But everything else is perfection. The voice acting Aicha does is really nice, honestly. I think she really captures Ruby's voice.
I wonder where Max is. He's probably in his room. Max, are you into...
In a way that you can tell it's not the official voice actress, but you can tell it's very well acted. I think the sound effects and everything in the video are very, very, very good. Same with the animation. I remember how long it took for her to make the video, and of course when I went and actually watched it for the first time when it was finished, I was genuinely blown away by the animation and just how cool it looked. I feel like it matches that perfect balance of being scary, but not too overly cliche. Obviously Max and Ruby 0004 isn't really a good story, so overall any version won't be like extremely masterpiece worthy. But for what this story is, I genuinely think Aicha captured it the best. And that is why Aicha's version gets the number 1 spot. I hope you all enjoyed this video. This took forever to make, record, upload, edit, everything. Be sure to smash that like button. Let's go for something insane. Let's go for over 100 likes on this video. If this video gets over 100 likes, I will do another ranking video on another kind of creepypasta that has a lot of retakes. Thank you again everybody, and I will see you in the next video. Take care my darks. If you enjoyed the video, and you would like to continue the scares, be sure to click one of the videos on the left or right, and click the channel logo to subscribe, and check the description if you want to join the Discord. Thank you for watching, and stay scared.